The Elite Zumo Smart Trainer, this week's surprise performer in the Lama Lab. The Elite Zumo was spotted back in 2018 in limited availability in only certain markets. It's recently reappeared with broader availability. I have ridden the Zumo a while back in the Lama Lab, but this week I got my hands on one of the new production units. Elite aren't short on having different models of trainers on the market, and their direct drive interactive smart trainer range looks like this, with the Zumo sitting there at the top as the cheapest one in the list. So you have the Zumo, the Suto, the Diretto X, and the Drivo 2. Jumping to the unit specifications of the Zumo trainer, it's a direct drive interactive smart trainer, so rear wheel off, bike goes on, away you go. Bike compatibility is road, mountain bike, quick release out of the box with native Thru-Axle support for 142/12. You use your Thru-Axle on this trainer if you've got a Thru-Axle bike. 148 requires a separate adapter if you have one of those. It's a Shimano/SRAM compatible Freehub with no cassette included. Supported connections ANT+, FEC and the rest. Bluetooth, FTMS and the rest that we expect. Power accuracy claims ±3% with a spin-down calibration required, but not every ride. Same as most direct drive smart trainers. It's maybe every few months, depending on your usage. Maximum grade simulation of 12%, max wattage 1350 at 40 km/h flywheel speed or 2200 watts at 60 km/h. This thing packs a punch when it comes to the sprint. Flywheel 4.2 kilos. Noise level is low, and I'll take you through that later on in the video. Mains power is required. Firmware updates are available via the Elite Upgrader app when the firmware updates are available. And listed under Other is a bonus round. It has Power Meter Link PML, which is exactly like Power Match with software, but it does it within the hardware. If you have a power meter, ANT+ or Bluetooth in the general vicinity, typically on your bike, it can link to that and report that as the power that you're doing, bypassing the internal power meter. The Zumo has temperature compensation, very similar, or I'd say probably identical to ATC for power meters, where things heat up, power can drift. That takes it into account for power calculations, and you get 12 months of My e-training subscription with Elite. Over to the pricing, and you can see here it is one of the cheapest direct drive interactive smart trainers out there. Euro 599, UK 450 pounds, US 650 and Aussie dollars 799. As you can see from the pricing there, the Zumo is at the lower end of the mid-range budget direct drive interactive smart trainers, but so is the Suto, and the Suto kind of muscles its way into this category by providing a little extra value. So the Suto is only $100 more in most markets, but with the Suto you get a cassette, 1 month of Zwift, you get no assembly required, so you don't have to tool around with the thing, and you get a front riser block. So depending on the value you put on all of those, it might be 1 for 1 for value. That is assuming the Suto can hold its own against the Zumo. The Zumo does pretty well. Alrighty, here in the Lama Lab with one of the largest smart trainer boxes that I've seen. So a lot of spare air or empty air here in the Zumo packaging, but it all ships very well. No damage to the trainer whatsoever. Alright, lifting the trainer out. Now this unit did come with a cassette pre-installed from Elite for the Lama Lab. They don't ship with a cassette. And also my favourite tool here, the Dyson Stick Vac, links below to that. We have the unit of the Zumo. We have the feet, we have the quick release, we have the Thru-Axle adapters, the bolts, the manuals, documentation, and the power supply. All pretty straightforward to put together. Let's get about doing that now, after I quickly read the manual to find out which bolt goes where. 2 bolts in the main leg here, 1 bolt each for each of the arms. And they do swing in and out if you were to move the trainer around or to set up your pain cave each time you do a workout. So it does have a handle on the back too, which is handy. Alright, the feet also have levelers on them, just twisting those out to make sure the thing is nice and stable for the sprints in the Lama Lab Test. Good to go. And back to my favourite tool in the Lama Lab, the Dyson Stick Vac. Nice and clean now, and we're switching this over from quick release over to Thru-Axle. Less than a minute to get that done. And one bonus thing of all the new Elite trainers, they come with extended power supply cables. You can see that there. Heaps of length in that to get it over to the power supply on the wall. Plugged in, away we go, bike installed. Now you may have heard me use the terminology native Thru-Axle. And this is what I mean by native Thru-Axle. I can use the Thru-Axle from my bike directly on the trainer. No quick release / conversion kits / spacers or anything. Once everything is set up, you use the Thru-Axle that comes with your bike, line up the threads, tighten it up, and you are done. Okay, a quick first pedal of the unit. With the directional mic, you can hear the gear changes over almost everything else there. Pedaling away, Again, shotgun mic aimed directly at the trainer, and you can hear the drivetrain more so than the trainer. So it's a quiet trainer, not silent, but quiet. And that Freehub could probably use a little bit of packing grease, but we'll worry about that another day. Next up is checking the firmware on the Zumo with the new Upgrado app from Elite on the iPhone here. So logging in, yes, we do want to connect via Bluetooth. We find the Zumo. It will then go off and check with the Elite servers if there's any updates for that. So current firmware 191, hardware revision 3, and it is all up to date. Happy days, no updates required. If there was an update, you'll be prompted here to follow that process. Closing that app out and pairing everything up to Zwift. We have the controllable trainer, we have power source and Cadence, all connected to the Zumo. And it's on to Titan's Grove, which is a brilliant warm-up for a trainer. Undulating terrain, ups and downs, should really heat things up with that varied terrain. After the 10 minutes is done, we switch off the controllable trainer pairing, we jump over to the Elite app, the My E-Training app. Advanced configuration of the trainer and spin down calibration. This only needs to be performed every now and then, but I do it out of the box, just to make sure everything lines up. Okay, we're spinning down. Should present us with an offset there at the end, and there we go. Offset value. Confirmed. We close out of that app, we repair everything to Zwift, and we should be good to go for the power numbers. So coming to the end of the 200 watt section here from the Lama Lab Test into the transitions, and we've got a 1, 2, 3, I counted almost probably spot on 3-second transition there from 200 to 250 watt in erg. So with that stepper motor, pretty much on par is what we expect. It didn't really jump there straight away, but it got us to there at a nice stable value. Okay, making sure I'm in the right gear for the sprint. And it's on. And the Zumo had more power behind it than I could put to the pedal. So no problems at all there for the sprint. I wasn't in ahead of it or in front of that stepper motor, and it didn't spin out. Now onto the overs and unders section of the Lama Lab Test. And the graphs here look pretty good. No major waves or no major overs and unders within each 20-second section. It seems to stabilize pretty well. And the transitions from low power to higher power weren't too bad at all. But the truth is in the data. As always, here we are on my favourite website on the internet, DC Rainmaker's analysis tool, where we can compare multiple power meters as an overlay and see how they stack up. And stack up, they do. This test here was a Quarq DZero on the bike, the Elite Zumo as the trainer. Standard Lama Lab Test, which is getting more and more detailed as time goes on, and as we discover more things about smart trainers and different ways to poke them. So standard warm-up here over Titan's Grove before the calibration, and all looks pretty good there. So the responsiveness of Titan's Grove, which is up and down, all looking pretty good. So within a few watts there, but those watts really tightened down after the calibration performed at around 10 minutes. Into the steady state 200 watts and 250 watts. I'm going to skip over that little part just there where I had a dropout, be that from environmental factors, be that from just being a dropout. I will skip that though because it's the data from the trainer I want to look at. And we jump in here, 200 watt steady state into 250 watt steady state on a budget direct drive smart trainer that is plus or minus 3% in its specs. Boom. That is absolute, that's not what I expected. That is really, really good. So within a few watts there, overall 233, 237 with a spike there at the end for the sprint, but that's looking really, really good. It was a pretty smooth ride on the pedals. You can see there's a few ups and downs as that stepper motor sort of centered itself at the set point it needed to be, but as I was smooth on the pedals, that was pretty good. That was the first surprise. Into the sprint on the unit, and not too bad. Peak power was within a few watts. Sustained power, probably a little low, but you can see that it's still pretty close for the sprint. Just riding along, into the overs and unders. Boom. This is a budget smart trainer. It's not meant to be acting like that. It's meant to give me more things to talk about with discrepancies in power. 258, that just worked. up into the 450 zone. The next test is the Flywheel speed test, which is a recent addition to the Lama Lab Test, in which I set the trainer for 4.5 minutes, and every 90 seconds I change the flywheel speed. Same cadence, same power, different flywheel speed by changing through the gears. Usually what we see at the end is that trainers can't hold both power, accuracy, and resistance at a high flywheel speed. Things just start going a little skewy, except on this budget smart trainer. So the first section here, slower flywheel speed, this would have been 39, 25 or 28 up the back. Slow flywheel speed here. Power accuracy is pretty good, holding its own. Into the mid-range zones of the gearing, medium speed flywheel between probably 35 and 40 kilometers an hour. That's still pretty good. And then here, when I whack it in the 53, 11 up the back, you can see the spike there for me to get that flywheel on. It still reports correctly and accurately. It's a little wavier because you're on top of the gear, but the Zumo is holding its own against the Quarq DZero. Surprising. Good, but this is not what's happening with the higher end units. So again, the Zumo is surprising me. Onto a shorter, harder effort here, up a small little hill. So just riding alongside, you can see they match one for one, just riding in sim mode. Jamming the pedals, what have we got? 700 watts there for around 30 or 40 seconds. Reading a little bit low by a few watts, but given it's a budget smart trainer measuring weight on the back, that's still pretty good. And overall there, 212, 211 overall. That's pretty decent. And then just riding along, 109, 109, just cruising. Power-wise, this thing absolutely nails it. Jumping to the cadence reporting coming from the Zumo, which is calculated from your pedal stroke and your power analysis. Titans Grove's the part where things usually fall apart from here. So cadence versus the Quarq in Titans Grove, 84, 84, and so it's up and downs. Again, they've got that working as well. That's spot on. Quickly jumping to the overall stats here, and it's happy days. These can be influenced by dropouts and start and stops and recording intervals on head units, but look, it's a good indication indoors where you don't coast a lot. 186 versus 186, 238, 237 normalized. Sprint-wise, we're looking within, what's that, within 12 watts or 8 watts there, maximum sprint-wise. That is very, very surprising for this trainer. And average cadence, 86, 86. Job done. After every lab test, I do summarize everything and send it off to the company for review, and I think I'll just cut and paste what I've sent over to Elite for the Zumo. So my lab test observations here was within 2.7% of the Quarq at 200 watts, within 1.7% of the Quarq at 250, well within the 3% spec, plus or minus the Quarq as well. Within 0.68 of peak power and maximal sprint, that was phenomenal. The Zumo was a little low for peak sustained sprint power, so when the sprint was right up there and humming along, a little bit lower, but not as much as we've seen on other trainers, and I think acceptable given the technology used and the budget this trainer comes in at. The over and under for 150, 350, 450, etc. on the Lama Lab Test was exceptionally good for power, and the erg mode ramp changes were pretty good as well. The power accuracy with those different flywheel speeds was phenomenal. I have not seen a trainer pass that part of the Lama Lab Test, so a huge tick there for the, but can you tell I'm quite surprised with this budget trainer and how it's performing. Anyway, tick box there, it's based on data. The shorter hard 700 watt effort was within 2.39% of the Quarq. Again, tick box there. The only observation I have, which could be seen as a criticism possibly, was the ride feel was a little light. I needed to change down 1 or 2 gears on the back to make it feel like I was riding a bike. On 0% gradient, it was really spinny. I was really on top of the gear. I had to crack down a few gears to feel that ride feel that I'd expect indoors. That's really the only observation I have. We're not riding around in the 5311 or the 3911 anyway, so there's always a few extra gears. It was 1 or 2 down on the back, and it was okay. So on to my overall summary notes, again, that I sent through to Elite as an FYI on how their trainer performed in the Lama Lab. The power accuracy was within acceptable ranges in the Lama Lab. The power reporting from the Zumo isn't as sharp on the spikes as compared to a crank or a spider-based power meter. However, that's kind of what we expect. Cracking down the power really sharply on the pedals, you're going to get that spike that the trainer might not pick up on instantly. But other than that, it was pretty good. Cadence data was great. Erg responsiveness was good. Wasn't exceptional. Wasn't sort of punch you straight away at 450, exceptional. Wasn't really as smooth as the H3, but it was pretty damn close. So pretty good for that. It passed the erg flywheel speed tests. Nothing passes the erg flywheel speed test. This thing did. The ride, as I mentioned before, feels a little light in regard to resistance, so cracking down 1 gear on the back, a little harder, made the thing feel a little better. Quiet operation, although not silent. Good ride feel, not sluggish. Overall, a good performer for the price. Wrapping up today with my conclusion of the Zumo direct drive interactive smart trainer, and it's a pass. It passes the Lama Lab test. The power accuracy was as per spec, if not even better. The ride feel and ride experience was far beyond what I expected for this level of smart trainer. It actually holds its own up against some higher end smart trainers too, especially with those flywheel speed tests and power accuracy. The Zumo still uses the stepper motor technology internally where it moves magnets physically, but it was one of the better units with this technology that I've ridden recently. If you haven't picked up on it already, the Zumo did surprise me and I was pleased to see it pass those Lama Lab tests, especially for a budget level smart trainer. So we'll leave it there for today. Thanks for watching this one. Give it a thumbs up if you found this interesting and hit that subscribe button to support this channel. It's much appreciated.